Morning, everyone. Welcome back. Did you have a fun Napa Valley night? Ate some good food? If you find great restaurants in Napa, let me know because I'm still figuring out my way around the restaurant scene here, so I welcome all recommendations. I miss Santa Elena a little bit, but when you're in this beautiful setting, it's really, really great to be getting used to Napa and learning a whole new part of the Napa Valley as a visitor. I want to thank Wonderful for our breakfast. And I will welcome back Alison Ryder to the podium for our first spotlight of the day.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Let me see if I can get my slides up here. Keep slides. Get those up. Okay, so yesterday, for my first spotlight, I gave you the science behind how much protein we're consuming, and that we're over-consuming protein, we're over-exceeding the basic requirements for protein, and the majority of that coming from animal sources. And so I'm going to continue on the conversation and make the case that we are really missing out on the quality of the nutritional quality that comes from plant sources of protein, and how we measure and how we look at diet quality and why diet quality of a plant-based diet really matters. So some proteins are better than others for the health of the planet, health of the population. That's why we're here. And we're missing out on this whole world of plant proteins. And again, these are beautiful infographics from the Protein Flip document from Menus of Change. And while we can look at scientifically what are the detrimental aspects of including more red meat in our diet, we can also look at the positive benefits of including more nutritionally dense plant proteins in our diet. And this is certainly, I think, at this conference, when we're saying plant proteins or plant-based diet, we're talking about these beautiful foods, beans and lentils and soy, etc. But for the typical American diet, this might be more of what plant-forward could look like. I know I had a roommate in college who was vegetarian, and this was pretty much what she subsisted on. And that is, I think, the reality for people that are doing, vegetarian or plant-based for maybe animal welfare reasons, but they're not really connecting the full health side of things. So this is plant-forward, but diet quality really matters. And so the way this is measured in the literature is in several ways. There's this healthy eating index that is used to measure how accurately Americans align to the dietary guidelines. So the USDA kind of ranks or rates what the dietary score is based off of dietary guidelines adherence. And as you can see, a 59, I don't know where you went to school, but that certainly was not a passing grade in school. So we're definitely falling short there. And Harvard, in the School of Public Health, they created an alternative healthy eating index with some more nuanced components that reflect specific diet quality of components. So not just any carbohydrates, but giving more points to whole grains, and taking away points for refined grains and sugar-sweetened beverages. So according to Harvard's alternative healthy eating index, we're even lower. We're at about a 50. And that hasn't changed too much. We've increased a little bit, but hasn't changed too much over time. So we still have a ways to go. But interestingly enough, Harvard has taken it one step forward with really trying to understand what a plant-based diet index would look like. How do we score that? How do we rank that? How do we connect that to health outcomes over time? And there's been a ton of research showing the health and environmental benefits of exclusively vegetarian and vegan dietary styles, but there's this still in between that we're here talking about of what is a plant-based diet and how do we score that? How do we measure it? So what you're looking at here on the left side is they were able to come up with 3 plant-based dietary indices. So just a generic kind of plant-based diet definition where they gave positive scores if you're including more plant foods, negative scores for including animal foods, but then they took it one step further to define a healthy plant-based diet compared to an unhealthy plant-based diet. And the distinguishment there was including more of the healthy, whole grains and legumes and nuts and soy, compared to you kind of lose points if you're including more of the refined grains and sugar-sweetened beverages. And what you can see on the left side, and this is, they looked at heart disease outcomes, and the two lines on the bottom, that's the plant-based diet and the healthy plant-based diet. Actually, the more you adhere to those two indices, the lower the heart disease risk was. And above the line, the unhealthy plant-based diet actually increased the risk for heart disease. On the flip side over there on the right side, this is just another way to show the data that if you're including healthy plant foods, that line on the bottom shows that it's the decreased risk of heart disease, whereas including more animal foods in the same plane as including less healthy plant foods, then that increases the risk of heart disease. And these were similar results that they showed for type 2 diabetes too. So this is making the case that we need to look at those components of, less animal foods is great, but we also need to include more healthy plant foods in our diets. Another recent research publication that just came out that I highly recommend if you're interested in learning more or kind of diving into this a little bit more. I alluded to Christopher Gardner and his team at Stanford. They published this study that looked at the intersection of the health and sustainability aspects of protein and what it would look like to start shifting plates. So they came up in the quadrant A. They came up with just a current scenario of this, like around 90 grams of protein of what we're currently consuming, about 85% animal proteins, and they just picked like common food sources of proteins, and this is certainly not representative of all protein foods or what you would eat in an entire day, realizing that other foods also contribute protein. But they make the point that ultimately the best shift scenario that we could possibly get to is that shift D, where we can shift to decreasing 25% of our protein down to somewhere more realistic, 67, 70 grams of protein, but shifting that to more 60-40 plant animal. And they were able to do some modeling with the data to show that it would significantly reduce carbon emissions and water usage. So that's some interesting research that's going on of what those shifts really look like and how we can get there. And Greg alluded to the Eat Lancet report, and if you really have a chance to dive into that report, it's long, but if you read the executive summary or at least read some of the components of what they're recommending, that the planetary health diet, this is a slide that shows what those references are, and it does resemble about 70-80% plants and a very small amount of protein. And so this is definitely very aspirational, considering the data I gave you that we still have a long ways to go. But I think that this is still a good target. It's still a good goal. I do encourage you to read more about the science behind what recommendations are making and why, which animal proteins are specifically recommended. So that is what I'll be going into this afternoon a little bit more when we are going to include more animal proteins. Which animal proteins should we emphasize over others? But at least for now, the summary being that there is this just tremendous room for a substantial shift away from animal to plant foods, but they really need to be high-quality plant foods. And so when we say plant forward, for you all to help push that along in the industry, that can really become the shorthand for healthy, sustainable, plant-forward foods. So thank you very much, and you'll see me a little bit later.
Thank you so much, Alison. I've seen a number of Mediterranean diet-related presentations by Spanish scientists the last few months. And when they were showing this slide that Alison showed with a lot of junk food on it, it's dieta americana is the word for junk food in a Spanish scientific presentation. So, yes. I was trying to tell them that that's no longer the case and that shouldn't be a synonym, but there's clearly a lot of advocacy work to be done there too for that. So anyway, we are now going to switch to a panel, and on the main screen you will see how you can ask questions also. We are using Slido. If you've been to some of our conferences, or probably others too, you might be familiar with that as well. So on your mobile devices, on your laptops, you can go to slido.com and enter the code GPF 2019, and that allows you to ask questions when that part of the panel will open up. So this panel is on the business case for plant-forward menus, and we thought it was really important as we're creating a scientific case for it, a culinary and flavor-driven case for it. What about the business case? And a number of breakout sessions this afternoon will also be addressing that. But to moderate this panel and really for the direction of this panel and everything having to do with this panel. I've been very fortunate to work with Greg Dollarhyde, and he will take you through a really wonderful session. Greg has been in our industry for over 4 decades. He has been the chairman or CEO of 8 different companies. He's the former executive chairman of the board and CEO of Zoe's Kitchen, an NYSE listed fast casual Mediterranean concept with more than 250 restaurants. As chairman, he led the board in the IPO of Zoe's in 2014 and in negotiating the sale of the company for $300 million to Cava in November 2018. Greg is also the current director and former chief energizing officer of Veggie Grill, a 100% plant-based restaurant chain that he ran for 5 years. He also recently invested in and joined the board of Blaze Pizza, one of the fastest growing restaurant companies in North America. He has received the honor of Mentor of the Year from industry leader Elliott Associates and has been recognized in the Power 50 of the restaurant industry for 2 years in a row by Nation's Restaurant News. Through Dollarhyde Enterprise Group, Greg is looking to support, counsel, and invest in entrepreneurs that are chasing the American dream. So if any of you are chasing the American dream, you can find Greg at the break afterwards. His other significant hospitality investments include Lazy Dog Restaurant, Starboard Chicken, Bee Cellars Winery in Napa, and positive energy startup Tea Riot. Greg Dollarhyde.
Good morning. How's everyone today? This is going to be a fun group of people to talk to. I would like to keep it a little collaborative. You don't have to do the Slido thing. If you want to ask a question after we get through a series of questions, then just raise your hand and we'll keep it open. I've got a bunch of questions, and also I think that to tease more information out of our panel would be really important. For me, my journey began in the restaurant business, in the steakhouse business, but it has taken me through getting better for you food. I remember I joined, these are just slides of indulgent plant-based food. Everything you see up here is 100% plant-based. And so you see the form factors, and we'll talk about that later today. But when I ran Baja Fresh, what we really did is we took gloppy, cheesy Mexican food, and we made it fresh with handmade sauces every day. We threw the guacamole away every night, for example. When we did Zoe's Kitchen, it was really taking health food to the south. And when you went down there, when we bought Zoe's Kitchen, the most amazing thing about Zoe's was 70% of the people in the restaurants were women. They were the leaders in better-for-you eating in the South. And it took us a while to get the men in. And we'd open these restaurants, and there'd be 75% women every day and night. But we successful with that and ended up taking it public. Then I got even more plant-forward and became CEO of Veggie Grill, which I thought was a huge opportunity to bring vegan food, that we didn't call it that, plant-based food to the U.S. And California was a perfect place to start that. But we didn't start out with mung beans and stir fries and the like. We started out with form factors that were very much like you'd see in a chicken sandwich or a hamburger or the like. And that's really how I think the plant-based movement had to really start. And to be a chain or a commercial success was to bring some indulgence to the plant-based space. However, that did catch up with us. In 2013, our comp store sales went down almost 20% when we put out our nutritionals, and people said, well, wait a minute. I thought this was good for you food. Well, what's wrong with a little olive oil and kale together? They're great, right? It happened to be 650 calorie salad, but it's okay. You'll love it. So today, we have 3 people who have also been in the business a long time. And I'd like to first introduce Helen Wechsler. Helen, please come out. Good morning. Helen joined the Food at Google team in 2013 as the Bay Area director. She oversees an extremely diverse portfolio of food operations, and growing since her arrival a number of years ago, she runs, or is responsible for, 65 full-service cafes, 570 food spots, an off-premise catering operation, 4 child care centers, a mobile food program, and 35 food trucks to more than 60 Bay Area locations. And, now that's a job. In her expansive role, Helen also manages the 3 Food at Google vendor partners who work in tandem to deliver on each program element with the overarching goal of delighting Google employees with food choices and experiences that allow them to be their best. In addition to leading a team of 8 program managers, Helen collaborates with global partners to guide the strategies of a complex set of programs. She has a very tall order. We should dig into what her mission is at Food at Google. She has a robust passion for food that is evident through her 25-year experience in the business, ranging from owning her own catering business to serving as director of dining for Boston College. Helen has 3 dogs. You should know that. And being a food service executive, one of the dogs is, of course, named Sugar. Okay. Next, Alison Rabschnuk. She is the director of corporate engagement at the Good Food Institute, where she leads a team that advises some of the world's largest food companies. She's a joy to talk to, by the way. She is really on the cutting edge of a lot of things we should get into today. She is also works in plant-based and cell-based meat, eggs, and dairy, and to increase the quality of how they come to market. So she's a tiger in every sense of the word. She has 25 years of advertising, marketing, and sales experience at GFI. She has helped shepherd brands like Taco Bell, Levi Strauss, Gap, Kiplinger, and Parents Magazine, as well as being a consultant to General Mills, Time Inc., and NBC Universal. She's a graduate of Wellesley College and lives in a charming seaside town of Hingham, Mass. That if you've been to Hingham, Mass, it is truly charming. She has 2 cats, okay, and staying in the food service genre. One of them is named Peanut. Okay. Next, I'd like to introduce Erik Oberholtzer. Erik and I have known each other, competed with each other for a while. He got one of my favorite restaurant sites, taken right out from underneath me. Erik is a chef, the co-founder of Tender Greens, and now an advisor to the next generation of food entrepreneurs with plant-centered menus built on organic supply chains. In 2009, he founded the Sustainable Life Program, a paid culinary internship with a mission to provide a path forward for foster youth in our industry. Erik is also director of the Cradle Institute in Pennsylvania, which helps drive awareness around soil health, regenerative agriculture, and food as medicine. Additionally, Erik is a global champion of the Food Forever initiative based in Bonn. Erik does have an animal. It's a dog, and he did not name it after a foodstuff. So, and dog's name is Bowie. So that will get us started here today. Let's just start with craveability. In this business, we all worry about, work with deliciousness or craveability. So in the world of craveability, plant-based or plant-forward, let's say plant-based. What's your favorite plant-based meal? Alison, we'll start with you. What's your favorite plant-based meal? I said.
Yeah, I actually love tofu, to be honest. Like a really good fried tofu. I've been was a vegetarian for 27 years and vegan for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I never really was looking for something that was like meat. So that's why I love tofu.
Good.
That's a really hard question. First of all, I love vegetables, and I love them when they're in season. So when the chef put up the slide the other day, or yesterday, feels like forever ago, it's about seasonality. So it's at this time of year, we're blessed in California. There's artichokes, there's sweet peas, there's asparagus coming, there are fava beans. So the lettuce is sweet and tender. The carrots are perfect. So it's all just whatever you find, I think is really, in the moment, probably my favorite.
Well, that's a great answer. All right, Erik. I know you spent a lot of time at it.
I'm a little bit redundant with you, but to take it a step further, I was in Venice last week and just walking around the neighborhood. And
Italy or California?
California.
Okay.
And, you know.
He gets around, I had to know, yeah.
The loquat trees were in full bloom,
oh, yeah.
And there were fava beans along the roadside, and I literally foraged in Venice for my meal. So I think, the magic of foraging for food, whether it's at the farmer's market or, in your garden, and then treating it with a lot of respect is the best form for me.
That's fantastic. Erik and I, before we're getting ready for the conference, we're just talking about what we want to talk about and what he wanted to have as some of the things to bring up. And I'll bring it up for him. Erik really likes to go back to the real source, to the seed and the farmer and the like. And he calls it what we did at Tender Greens was salt and pepper cooking. And I thought it was a very interesting phrase, salt and pepper cooking. So can you give us a little bit more about, that concept that you brought to Tender Greens and working with the farmers and helping them commercialize so you could commercialize and the like. It's a great story.
Yeah, it's it's really the idea of buying the best possible product in season from people you know and like, and not screwing it up, not getting in the way of the magic of the ingredients. And with Tender Greens, it was just to take that idea that really started here in the Bay Area and democratize it, bring it to as many people as possible by making it relatable, which I think is what you did in a sense at Veggie Grill. Also, if people relate to it, then they try it, and if they try it and it's delicious, then they come back.
Yeah. Just as simple. Yeah. How many people have been to Tender Greens? Some of the older ones. Yeah, right. How could you miss it? It's a concept not to be missed, really, for its at time frame. All the display of the food as you go down the line, get ready to order, and you're you're salivating on the sneeze guard, and it's kind of messy, but it looks so good. You did a great job with that. So this will be all three of you also. What are the biggest obstacles to overcome when marketing and actually selling plant-based food? I know you don't sell it; you kind of give it away. But let's see if you had to sell it. Okay, what are the biggest obstacles? Alison, I want to start with you to selling plant-based food.
I think a lot of it's just the terminology that's used. So right now, the word plant-based is a little bit confusing, I think, for consumers. Plant-forward is, I think, also a little bit confusing. Vegan and vegetarian are pretty well-known terms, but the research that we have done ourselves and seen other organizations do as well shows that there's a lot of negative association with those terms. So vegan and vegetarian have a long-term history. They carry baggage with them. So while they are very descriptive, and obviously people who are vegans and vegetarians do want to know what's in the food, as far as marketing those products to a wide stream consumer market, whether it's flexitarians or omnivores, we definitely recommend that you use terms that are more positive, that don't have baggage, and that are really indulgent. So I think the marketing of a lot of these foods is definitely an obstacle. We've seen some fast food restaurants put a plant-based burger in the salads and more section. So that's a great example of, consumers who aren't necessarily vegans or vegetarians, probably they're not going to be attracted to those products because they're not really seen as indulgent. They're not on the same par as some of the other products. So we definitely view marketing as a big challenge, but we're working on it.
Good. Helen, how about you?
Oh, so clearly we're not selling anything. But what we are committed to is bringing people together over food and then hopefully recharging them and fueling them so they can be at their best and in a pretty competitive environment. So we, in terms of obstacles, I think we look at it a little differently in that what we're trying to do is nudge people toward a more balanced plant-forward program and diet, although when it's all self-serve for the most part, we're not in the business of diets any longer. So I think at the end of the day, what we try to do is really think about where we place the food. And our biggest obstacle in all of that really is at scale, at 65 cafes just in the Bay Area and hundreds more around the world. I would say if you were taking a poll of our culinarians, it is probably about the delivery at scale to just in time.
To follow up on that, you talked about nudging. How do you nudge without sounding preachy or that, hey, this is better for you, you should eat this?
So we definitely don't do that.
Of course not.
That's not successful. Even with super bright people, it's not successful. Nobody likes to be told what to do or what to eat. The nudge comes in a variety of different ways. It's all based in the notion of food choice architecture and behavioral science. And the best example I can give you is when I first came to Google 6 years ago, we have salad at breakfast, beautiful, beautiful breakfast salads. And they're the first thing you see, and they're very enticing. And I saw them on the lines, and I thought, what a waste. Who eats salad for breakfast? And I was stunned. Simply placing it making it look appetizing. People take breakfast. Breakfast salad is a huge deal at Google, and it's ubiquitous. It's global, and so that's just a tiny example of how we nudge folks. We do work with the Better Buying Lab on descriptive dish titles, and we track to see, does it make a difference when you actually call something, is it black bean soup? Is it Cuban black bean soup?
There you go. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Erik, you've had, again, many years of marketing plant-based, plant-forward food along with proteins. And so how do you think about this new, you're an ingredient guy. I mean, we've had this conversation. He's a short list ingredient guy, and like I said, salt and pepper chef. So how do you see this new Impossible Burger with tahini and the mystery ingredient list and all of that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's it has a place, I think, particularly for those who might be living off of a processed diet now. It at least takes pressure off of the environment. Mm-hmm. So there's an environmental argument for it. I think there's a migration argument. It at least gets people into eating plant-based.
It's the gateway drug.
It's sort of the gateway drug. It's the white Zinfandel of vegetarian. As a chef, I don't love the products. I think they're overly processed. So it's not something I fully embrace, mm-hmm. but I respect and I honor what they're trying to do. And I question how healthy they are. So there can be this misunderstanding that everything that is plant-based or vegetarian or vegan
right.
is good for you.
Right.
And that's just not the case. So I fall on the side, as you said, of whole food. Mm-hmm. But I do appreciate those who are driving the sort of the animal analogs, because there is a role to play.
Sure. Alison, I know you have a point of view on this for sure.
I sure do. So the work that we do at the Good Food Institute is really to help solve some of the two biggest questions that a lot of corporations, nonprofits, and governments are asking today, which is how do we feed 10 billion people by 2050, and what do we do about climate change? We know that humans love meat, and we know that meat consumption is actually on the rise globally. We also know that 98% of all meat that is consumed on Earth comes from factory farms. So if all the meat we were eating was from regenerative agriculture, which some argue is actually really good for the environment, then that would be one thing, but that's not the reality. So we really believe that changing consumer behavior is very difficult, and to assume that consumers will go from eating a steak to a bowl of lentils overnight is not realistic. So our thesis is, let's give consumers what they want, which is meat, but let's give it to them in a healthier way. So a way that's more sustainable for the planet, it's better for their health, and it's also far better for animals, of course. So I agree that it is a bit of a gateway drug. I think, the real solution is for everyone to be eating a whole foods plant-based diet. But again, I don't think that's realistic in the short term. 1/3 of Americans eat at a fast food restaurant every single day. They're looking for foods that are indulgent. So I do believe that products like the Beyond Burger, the Impossible Burger, do have a place. One can argue they're not as healthy as they might eventually be, but I think that's also something to consider, that Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat just launched their versions 2.0. That's still pretty early. So I think by the time we get to a version 10.0, it might very well be a lot healthier. But I think it is a great way to give people an indulgent treat that is very familiar, and it's also can fill the cultural ways that food is prepared. So going to a barbecue, they're not going to feel like they're left out and different. They can be like everyone else and have a similar product.
Gotcha. And how would you contrast Beyond with Impossible? Because Beyond is like holding up a higher torch, saying, well, we're not all that. We don't have this weird molecule or whatever it is, and we just use peas. So is there any contrast?
I think it's just consumer preference, to be honest.
In flavor?
Impossible the Impossible 2.0 burger is so similar to real meat. And I think for real carnivores, that checks their box. Yeah. For people who maybe are kind of turned off by meat, it doesn't check their box, and they're probably more going to go for a Garden Burger or Dr. Prager's burger. Yeah. So I think there is a place for all of these products. There's a big consumer segmentation, and it's just understanding, which products kind of meet those needs.
Gotcha. Any comments, Helen?
No, I would echo that it is a journey, and I would layer on that for us, it is also a matter of affordability, and I think it's interesting to see that it's moving into the fast food segments. It was just announced this week, I think, that Impossible Burger is going to show up at Burger King and a few others. So we'll see how that goes. We rely a lot more on blended burger and the work that we've done with our vendors and with our chefs to really perfect a delicious burger that's 45% mushroom by cooked weight. So we're very, very proud of that.
Sure.
We're actually doing a blended Impossible Burger.
There you go. That's the peak of the mountain there.
It's 50% mushroom, 50% Impossible. One, because of cost, because Impossible's so expensive. But two, to give it a little bit more differentiation than anybody can throw up an Impossible Burger on the grill, but if you sort of value add it, it's a little bit more interesting.
Great. Let's talk about that for a second. The business aspect of this, again, is what the panel should be focusing on as much as possible. So assuming taste is already off the table, it tastes good, whatever. Okay. Now, which is the most important, price, convenience, or the branding message / engagement of the guest? Price, convenience, branding, message, engagement of the guest. Which is most important? Anybody can start.
I think these days, convenience is probably winning the game for sure, particularly with third-party delivery and all of this. Price is a very close second, and then how you spin the language of food is an art that I think I'm certainly still trying to figure out.
Well, Helen was bringing up, Cuban black beans. Okay, what's your sense of this?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. It's
you had to pick one of the three: price, convenience, or marketing.
I will say,
branding.
actually, at a Food at Work program today, it is dependent on the on the engineer.
You're a hedger.
I will tell you, you can't pigeonhole me. You just
know.
Can't do it.
You were born that way.
It's convenience. I think it's convenience because time is so precious. But I also believe that it is also about transparency for us. So they really are looking for transparency.
Well, you got that
so you can
user base that has to know.
Yep.
Alison?
I think it's about taste. So all of our research, again and again, is showing that even though consumers may say one thing, like that they're looking for a healthier product, when it comes down to it, when they're actually buying the product, it has to taste good, especially for repeat purchase.
Well, we agree. We all agree with taste. Taste was
then
on the
I
table.
think in order for plant-based to be for the masses, then price. I mean, eventually the price is going to have to come down so that it's on parity. And I think we're getting there.
So audience, a lot of chefs in the room, people that do this for a living. How many people, taste is off the table, how many people would say it's convenience that matters the most? Okay, how many people say price? There you go. And marketing, spinning, engagement. Okay, good. You know what's funny about engagement? The reason I throw it in there, because at Veggie Grill, we have a hugely engaged group of people. We have close to 480,000 people engaged with the brand in only 32 restaurants. And I know restaurants have 300 restaurants that don't have that much engagement. And so it's a highly engaged group. And when we put on the Beyond Burger on the menu, we put it on at $12.95, which for us was like nosebleed because our next biggest, highest price sandwich was $10.95. And it structurally added 10% in comps to the concept. In 6 weeks, 10% in sales, and it stayed there. So, products matter, and if you can, there's some inelasticity if you have the right product. And we all know that from taste, right? I go to this one restaurant, they charge $26 for an Impossible Burger with fries. You're like, what? They're $26. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, so I think if you look at a lot of the restaurants that are carrying Impossible or Beyond, all of them are passing that extra cost onto the consumer. TGI Fridays, I think, charges an extra $3 for the Beyond Burger. The Impossible Slider is double the price of the beef slider. And all of these restaurants, from our conversations with them, are seeing that sales are going through the roof on these. Whether that will last long term and really be able to cover the masses is unclear. But right now, consumers are willing to pay more, especially for products that are more sustainable.
Well, you do this for a living, so is that we're accessing pent-up demand, or is it just FOMO, I got to try it before my friend tries it?
I think it's pent-up demand. I think people have been looking for really great tasting products that they know are healthier, so there is no cholesterol, and products that are better for the environment. So I think Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods have done a great job at explaining why they're in the business they're in.
Gotcha. Well, and we do a lot of, you guys do some research on the panel. I know you're involved in that world now a little bit more. When we did research at Veggie Grow many years ago, we said what was the most important, and whether it was healthy food or clean food or whatever, ingredient listing, the like. You know what showed up at the bottom? Sustainability. And that was in 2014. Sustainability was the least checked box. What do you think that'd be now?
I think it's probably still at the bottom at the end of the day. I think it's a nice to have, truthfully. It is about price, convenience, craveability, and then it becomes the politics of food later on. People care, but they don't care so much that they're going to pass on the price, convenience, and everything else. Right.
You can't really form a brand purpose. Like a lot of you all know about purpose branding, and we all have our examples of that. But there's people out there wrestling right now. Can the brand purpose be sustainability? Helen, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think again we're really in a moment in time where we're just beginning to understand where sustainability sits in the higher order. And as things get interesting here, I think it's very easy to be misled and say it's an easy yes, potentially on either coast. But I'm always, cognizant that we're not living in a bubble. I think that over the course of the next few years, I do believe as millennials age up, as Gen Z ages in, and all the things that we understand about that, and there are far better experts in the audience that will talk about that later. But I think we should be prepared to speak to sustainability and the environmental impacts of what we purchase and consume.
Commercially, can I charge more for that? I mean, it's like, we're the sustainable place. We go all the way, we go all the way to the seed. We've been saving these seeds for my grandmother for 14 years, and so my salad's $14 as opposed to $10.
I think the problem with that is transparency. So anybody can put a stencil on their wall or make a statement and not back it up with behavior. So the whole problem with sustainability is there's no real truth. So if you are walking the walk and you do have to pass that on to the consumer, you don't really have an advantage over those who are doing a really good job at marketing that or spinning that.
Exactly.
Organic whenever possible, local. What does that mean? What is sustainable? What is natural? What are all these terms? It's frustrating. So I think the consumers are confused and therefore not placing a lot of value because they're not sure who to vote for.
Exactly. Well, I was in Sweetgreen in New York City on Broadway, and I don't know if you've been to the Sweetgreen. You probably have. It's a very narrow box. At the back, there's a great big blackboard of everybody they buy from. And I know somebody in the city went and researched, and 30 to 40% of those people on that blackboard, they do not buy from. So once that gets out, then people go, what the hell, right? It's kind of interesting. Okay, to change it up a little bit. If you were going to start a plant food only chain and you couldn't have a burger, okay, burger's off the list because you're going into a center and someone else has an exclusive on burgers. You want to start a plant-forward concept. What would be the top 2 or 3 menu items you would have? And let's start with Helen, because you have a ton of food you're working with every day.
I think I would definitely start with, I think, a great sandwich. And I'll be honest, the thing that jumped into my head the first time was the sandwich at Turkey and Wolf in New Orleans, their Reuben with braised collard greens was like the most revolutionary thing I've ever
Sounds
eaten
great.
in the last. If you're in New Orleans, and I know there's a lot of good food, go to Turkey and Wolf. I have no affiliation whatsoever, but you will be blown away by this simplicity of a sandwich that just really takes something that is very ubiquitous and easily accessible, and it's just in the method of preparation creates the most craveable, delicious sandwich. And there's lots of other really meaty things to try there, but it was by far, and we tried a lot, by far the best thing on the menu. So I think knowing the market, I would start with a sandwich.
Wechsler's Reuben House. There we go. Wechsler's Reuben House. Okay, we got it. Erik?
Well, I would probably go slightly opposite. I don't think a restaurant needs to serve a burger. We never did at Tender Greens, and it worked fine for us. For me, it's an emphasis on these super grains and legumes that offer a lot of a lot of value, a lot of intrigue, a lot of texture, and carry flavor, and then whatever's in season you build on top of that, whether it's composed or guided in a sense that people can build their own. But I would just stick with real plants. And what we found at Tender Greens was our sandwiches are 5% of sales. So people are really going for the salads and the bowls and in the plates. I don't believe everybody needs to stick something between two pieces of bread.
Especially if you're a keto diet eater, then that's not what you're looking for anyways. Right?
Heck, we're going to all line up next to each other, and we're going to figure out what works.
Yeah. Well, we might make something out of this here. I got a little extra money to invest, and we could. How about you? What would be your?
Since I'm representing the plant-based products, I would definitely say plant-based chicken. So we do an analysis every year at the Good Food Institute of the top 100 restaurant chain menus. And there is a glaring omission with plant-based chicken. So we have a lot of burgers out there, but I think for consumers who, again, are looking for that familiarity, that indulgent type of dish, there's a lot to be done with plant-based chicken still. So all of the fast food chicken chains, really don't have much in the way of options. And there are a lot of companies now that are coming out with or that already have really good plant-based chicken.
Well, Gardein loves you. Yeah, exactly. No doubt about it. Let's see. We have some questions building in the audience, I hope. Let's just throw it out to an audience member. Come on. Who's brave? Yell loud.
No, actually repeat it because we're being...
I will repeat it. Okay, I will repeat it, please. Keep it short. I'll forget it.
The popularity of keto, paleo, whole 30, all of these things, I feel like on a caterer, what I hear from people is they want healthy, but they want meat. And these diet trends are so indulgent for people who feel like, oh, great, I can eat all the vegan I want. So how to market or push plant forward to a group that really is feeling like, I can eat all the meat I want.
Right. Well, they'll find out that their kidneys don't agree with them. Her question was, hey, I'm a keto paleo eater. I can eat all the meat I want. I can get all the mid-chain fatty acids I want and the like. And you're a plant-based provider. You don't have much for me. What do you have that will attract me and my way or my diet that I'm eating? Okay. You actually have experience in this, so not that you both do, but you have direct.
We never embraced any of these diets, but we were always able to accommodate them. But if you're gonna attach to any sort of diet or lifestyle, I would look at blue zones and see what they're doing right. And none of them are the same, but it's pretty clear that they sort of align with Michael Pollan. Just eat good food, whole food, real food, mostly plants, not too much. It's that simple. And I think this plant-forward movement is gaining sex appeal, and there are more and more people who are going to relate to it and identify with it without giving up some of these indulgences or restrictions around their fitness diet. But there are plenty of graphs to show that the more we've been obsessed with diets, the fatter and sicker we've become as a society. So
So you're going to tell this keto eater then, no. I got this for you.
Come back in
Come
3
back
months
after
when
you're
you're over it.
Yeah,
and
come back after you
we'll
change
take
your
care of it.
diet, I guess is the answer to that one. How about cell-based meat? What, I know you're working with cell-based meat. How does that play into the keto buyer?
It plays in really well because cell-based meat is actually real meat. So this is another form of food that is coming down the pike. Just to give you a sense of where it is. Actually, let me first explain for anyone who doesn't know what clean meat or cell-based meat is. It's basically a process where you take a sesame seed size biopsy of a live animal. It can be really any species. It can be fish, cow, chicken, and you grow those cells in a cultivator outside the animal. You feed it a medium, almost like the animals eat food. And what you end up with in a much shorter frame of time than if you were growing the animals is real meat. So back in 2016, there were about 4 companies around the world that were working on this process, and we now have about 36 companies around the world. We have companies like Tyson and Cargill and many others investing in these companies. The science has been proven, and it's now just a matter of scaling up. It's a challenge for sure, but it's one that a lot of companies are working on. So I think really the benefit to cell-based meat is, again, a way of feeding 10 billion people who are looking for meat, and it's a way to do this in a much more sustainable way. Preliminary life cycle analyses are showing that this is a way to produce meat using 90% less land, 90% less energy, and it's also much safer for many reasons.
Mm-hmm. But it is much safer. And how do people feel about cell-based meat? Let's show of hands. I would eat a cell-based meat chicken sandwich right now. Oh, good. Well, progress. It's like 20%. That's pretty good. You guys are brave. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Let's stay on this subject for a second. Let's talk about how much we can charge for this food. You're in a suburban environment. You got a plant-forward. Let's say really plant-based. You're not selling any meat whatsoever, cell-based or otherwise. You're in a suburban environment. You're in a big strip mall, whatever. What's the most you can charge for a lunch or dinner? Let's do lunch and dinner entree. What do you think is the most you can charge, and that person will buy? Not downtown New York, not the corner of Broadway and 23rd, but. Erik, you've been in that business too. Let's start with you.
It sort of depends on the suburb. Not all suburbs are created equally. But
yeah, okay. Let's say bi-coastal suburb, and then not downtown San Francisco.
Certainly Palo Alto, you can charge whatever you want. Walnut Creek's a little different.
Let's pick Walnut Creek.
Okay, Walnut Creek.
Because you have a store there.
Yeah, I think if you're really relying on great products that people assign value to, whether it's local farms or it's the Impossible Burger, you can charge in a fast casual setting upwards of $16, $17 all in, with no pushback
for lunch and dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So $16, $17 lunch in a suburb. So I think that's interesting. Helen, I know you're not in the pricing business, but you have a sense
I'm
of
not,
it.
and I'm going to answer the question slightly differently, and I think it's really something we need to consider in terms of the value of food and what we place value on. Mm-hmm. So it intrigues me, and I think we all, as part of a very important industry for the future, really have to think about how we place more value on whole food and not just focus on the next most intriguing thing to the consumer, whether that's cell-based meat, the Impossible, but whatever. And I think that's the real question. If we're going to actually aspire to feed the world, it has to be accessible. And so for me, it's all fun and games until we really get to the hard part, which is how do we make this delicious, great food accessible in a much broader sense. And so,
Well, the hard part is what Roy Choi tried down at Watts in L.A. with the local. I mean, I went there and first a couple weeks it opened, and food was great. Training was exceptional. The people were, you wouldn't say, okay, a food desert for sure. It is part of was, and didn't make it. Couldn't get it done. And any of you guys have any concepts? Pick one. Why didn't it work?
I still don't know if Roy Choi and Daniel Patterson can't make it work, especially Roy, who sort of was of the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough because he had everything going for him.
The pricing was very fair.
Yeah, and the food was relatable, I think, to the neighborhood. The concept that I like that is working is Every Table. I don't know if you know them in LA. It's Sam Polk. Ready-made meals, kind of like Pret-a-Manger or whatever. They have stores in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Charge Market or above Market.
On this last week, yeah.
And then they have stores in South LA and Watts at a price point that the community can afford. So it's sort of subsidized, but they're still paying. It's not free. And the housewife in Brentwood gets the exact same meal as the mother of 3 with 3 jobs in Watts, just a different price point.
Right.
It's a model that's working and scaling, and a lot of headwinds. But he listened to the community and gave the community what they wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to this point, there's a young man who's at Cornell in the East Coast working on exactly this for trying to figure out how to do Queens. And the idea being is you play the guilt factor of the people that live on the Upper East Side, and you say, you're going to pay $1 more, but that's going to keep someone in Queens healthier, and they can't access this food in the food desert they've got down there. And so don't you feel better, like Tom's shoes, don't you feel better buying this meal because that's going to make someone down here feel and be a lot healthier. And in the long run, there's this whole idea of it's going to be better for the entire healthcare system because you're not going to be forking over all this money when they show up at General Hospital with diabetes because they're eating junk food and 2-liter Cokes and the like. So it's a very interesting concept. It's fascinating. You have a thought on that, either Alison or Helen?
This is not really answering. It's answering, I think, the last question, which is I do think that this is not an either-or conversation of, does it need to be plant-based meat? Does it need to be whole foods, plant-based diet? Will it be cell-based meat? I think the way we look at it is it's going to be all of those things. So all of what we're talking about plays a role in different parts of the world, in different parts of our own country, with different consumers. So I think that's the important thing, is understanding what your individual consumers are looking for and what they feel like they're maybe missing out on.
Okay. We got some questions here that I like the bottom one. How would you define in percentages what is plant-based? I can tell you Veggie Grow, it's 100%. There is no anything, 100%. And our vegan users, which was about 18% of our visits, are rabid about it. So just so you know, there's a group out there that, in fact, there's a group out there that really doesn't care about calories and not even so much nutrition. As long as it doesn't have any animal products or honey or anything like that in it, they're good. It's interesting. So anyways, where'd the question go? There it is. So when does a meat dish become plant-based? So I'll change that. When does a meat dish become plant-forward? Is there a measure? Who's got the best answer? Survey says?
Well, I think you lead with plants when you write the menu. So you might list out the ingredients based on their dominance, and the animal protein is a garnish. It's an accessory to an otherwise plant-centric meal. So
kind of like Thai food?
Yeah,
like
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can look to a lot of these, these global cuisines as a template for what plant-forward really is.
Okay, someone wants to know what a breakfast salad is. To me, it's like a acai bowl. What is it to you?
A salad you serve at breakfast? It can be anything. It
let's keep it
varies.
simple.
It varies by location, but there's no super secret thing. It's just a beautiful salad.
Okay. How do we teach kids about eating whole plant-based foods when we're promoting fake meats and seafood? Let me answer my version of that. At Veggie, we introduced cauliflower mashed potatoes. And we played with how much cauliflower can we put in these mashed potatoes before somebody goes, tastes like cauliflower. Okay, so we went like 30, 40, literally we did 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 out across because, the more cauliflower you have, the more it's going to cost you. Okay, but you have to be transparent when people say, well, cauliflower mashed potatoes is only 10% cauliflower. That doesn't count. So it's like 30 to 60. And 40 was the point. At 40%, it still was pretty much mashed potatoes. And the mothers loved it. They would bring their kids in for mashed potatoes and gravy because the kid would slog it down and we'd sneak 40% cauliflower into their diet. Right? So it was kind of fun. You have any thoughts? Who wants to answer this one? How do we teach kids about eating whole plant-based foods when we're promoting fake meats and salads?
I think the big opportunity is the school lunch program. And not every school lunch is created equal because there are different audiences. So you have to meet kids where they're at. But I'm working with a group in New York called Genuine Foods, and we're leveraging the local supply chain as much as we can, despite the short growing seasons in New York. Right. Scratch cooking and through the lens of chefs and the format of fast casual. At scale for kids at a price point that matches or beats what is now really just a processed lunch program. And I think if you get to kids early and develop those tastes and those craveabilities and those food experiences, you can gift them for life with better eating habits.
True. So you say price point, you mean cost point, I think, in that
That's
example.
right. It fits within the budget
yeah,
of
it's got to be $1.72 or whatever,
right.
something like that. But let's flip that a second. And Alison, I want to throw this at you. So now I'm going to take that thinking, and I'm going to have a kids meal that's going to do this on my whatever restaurant. What can I charge for that kids meal?
I guess it depends on what product they're actually using. But let me just say that I completely agree with Erik about this because like the Humane Society's Forward Food Program is doing a fantastic job actually training K through 12 chefs for free on how to cook whole foods, plant-based meals, and they're really doing a great job of teaching kids, why it's important and how they can really be great tasting foods. And I think that these plant-based meat products and seafood products are going to have a harder time getting into K through 12 because of the price points. So I think where they are being used, like in Santa Barbara and other school districts, it's maybe once a week, twice a week because of the price points. But as those prices come down, they might be more integrated. But I think at this point, there is a lot of great whole foods plant-based cooking that's happening at the K through 12 level.
Okay, there's a question at the bottom here about Middle America. I'm going to reframe the question, whoever sent it in, to something more along the lines of this, that in Middle America, there's kind of this, they're meat and potatoes, and that's all they're going to be. And which is going to change first? The supply of more healthy, better for you foods in the Midwest that they can pick from, or is it going to come from demand, like women, of we want these foods, somebody grow them?
I think the demand's there. But you drive outside the city limits or away from the coast. But even here in Napa Valley, you drive towards Stockton, you're going to struggle. If you go into the Central Valley, it is a food desert. We grow most of the country's food in the Central Valley, yet it's Harris Ranch, In and Out, or nothing. At least along the 5 freeway. So it is a food desert, despite the fact that it's America's salad bowl or whatever they call it. It's and I think if you offer it, people will, moms will try it first, and then it'll expand.
Does that answer your question? This person who put up this question, does that sort of? So Erik's answer is, there's going to be demand, and somebody's going to figure it out and bring supply. That's Erik's answer. Any other answer that works?
I can just say on the retail side, again, we're talking about plant-based products, so plant-based meat, dairy, egg alternative products. we had been asked by some restaurant chains, is this really just happening on the coasts? This kind of shift to these plant-based products. So we actually did work with Nielsen and identified this whole category of products and found that it is happening. The growth, it's overall 17% growth year over year for these products and 23% year over year growth for plant-based meat specifically. And we're seeing it in all pockets of the country. If you look at the 9 different census regions. I'm not going to go into the rural towns, probably not, but it is happening all over the United States.
Well, rural towns eat peas and carrots. I've been eating peas and carrots for hundreds of years. So, you just give them something new besides just peas and carrots in a can, for example. Let's see. Have any other interesting questions? I've got more, but let's see if the audience wants to know about. There's a hand raise. Oh, hand raise. I love hand raises. Go. Mm-hmm. So the question is,
I feel like a lot of the advertising or all of business movements are concentrated on the coast, and it's almost like when you want someone to change, you continually market it to the people that want it, as opposed to the people that haven't heard of it.
right?
Is there a reason why there isn't as much of a drive to educate those people? In a sense, it isn't maybe necessarily just a new restaurant that is mostly vegetable based.
Yeah. Okay, so just to encapsulate it, or I'll try. This young lady is 20 years old. She's a millennial. She lives in Iowa. She's looking for more plant-based offerings. She can't find it. She's frustrated. And why isn't it being brought to us? Why aren't we having this food marketed to us, either as a restaurant or as a grocer? Because the manufacturing, let's face it, has come so far in packaging and distribution. There's no reason why it shouldn't be in Buffalo Center, Iowa. So that's your question. Is that fair?
A little bit, yeah. And I think a lot of it just comes from people not understanding the plant-based side of it. But it's just, we may have some co-ops, maybe a couple in the state, where you can get more whole foods and stuff, but it's just not really close. And if it is priced exorbitantly.
Yeah. Well, that's distribution costs, and it's also it was. People in business are going to go where the fish are biting, right? And let's just face it, you fish where the fish are biting. And so the fish are biting in San Francisco. So when you come up with the non-meat burger that's $12 and it's stacked and it's got the form factor you like, that's where you're going to go put your money. Well, will McDonald's, I think you're going to see the change come in the Dairy Queens, A&Ws, McDonald's, and Burger Kings and the like, where we're just like Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, a couple years ago, kale was definitely jumped the shark when it's a kale salad at Chick-fil-A, right? So, that's, I think, personally, is where that answer is going to come from, is the QSR guys are going to start bringing in more product because people like you, of your age, of your mindset, are going to demand it.
Burger King announced that they were going with Impossible or Beyond, which is huge.
Huge.
And I think... oftentimes we look at these big legacy brands like a Burger King or a McDonald's or even Coca-Cola, and we're a little dismissive. But if they go to a blended burger or an Impossible Burger, that's change at scale. And I applaud them for doing it. I think there's a real business reason for that, and it's a way to differentiate. And they can own it, and everybody else will follow. So I think it's bold, and it's also an example where those brands are operating in the Midwest, and therefore, if they're bold enough and take the risk, they can bring some of these ingredients and these foods and these conversations to communities who otherwise are not sitting in this.
Yeah, and
in this audience?
to camp on Eric's point, I think what's going to happen is this balance of capitalism and government. Right? If you leave capitalism to its own devices, it can run rampant, right? And not even bring stuff to your town because it doesn't pay to do that. And what can government do? Well, government can start at the school level and say, we're going to mandate these products be given to these children in schools, and if you do it right, they'll actually like it and eat it. They'll eat cauliflower and mashed potatoes, and they'll get a better chance at a better diet than just straight old mashed potatoes. And so it's stuff like, I think there's going to be a balance. You're going to see the two of them. I have another hand.
No,
No.
last question, and we'll give it to someone who actually
Thank you,
took the
Ann.
time to slide.
Okay, good, fair enough. So which one would you like to do, Ann?
I like the how do you convince fellow line cooks to not immediately condemn vegetarian vegan customers.
There you go. Okay, Helen.
Well, I think so. A lot of it starts with debunking many things that you learn, especially if you've, like many of us have gone to culinary school or worked at culinary schools where still our training is a little bit schizophrenic around, do we train with meat as a focus of the center of the plate? I mean, we still have a system in kitchens where, you start with veggies and then you end as the top of the top
Right.
dog doing all
protein.
the land proteins. So I think there's work to be done there. I also think that in kitchens, influencing, leading from the top are great ways to convince our teams that's important. And lastly, I think there's value in family meal, because family meal is generally something that is reflective of a global cuisine, of the culture of the kitchen, and those cuisines, by and large, tend to be heavily toward balanced plant forward.
Gotcha. Eric, you know this personally. From you grew up in it.
Yeah,
Everybody disses the vegan customer.
well,
Vegan meal, what the hell? Throw some pasta on it.
I'm struggling right now. So my line cook's self, my chefy self, we certainly want to accommodate everybody, but you do have neurotic diners, whether it's gluten-free or
Sure.
whatever dietary restrictions they have that are mostly in their head. You hear me?
Vote of confidence there. Yeah. That's right.
I'm going to finish this strong. So it's a challenge because I think a lot of us now overreact because it's become so politicized, and we just want to deliver really good, clean, healthy, delicious food. And when our menus are then picked apart, it can be frustrating and offensive, and in the heat of the moment,
absolutely.
sometimes we roll our eyes and get a little
Well, so you get behind.
boisterous.
It slows the line down. You got ticket times to worry about, stuff like that. So I think we're done for the day. Are we done? I think I see red lights and stuff. I just want to leave everybody with one thought. That if you want to make a lot of money in plant-based foods or in the restaurant business in general, find a way to do a 23andMe food chip. That person gets their work done, their lab work done, and what they should eat is on the chip. And really, what you preponderance what you should eat is on the chip for your genetics. And you walk into the restaurant and go, bowl. And they go, oh, okay. I see there's 6 bowls here. How about this one? Boom. That's where it's going. And I don't know whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but the person who figures that out is going to make a bundle of money. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg, Erik, Alison, and Helen. So first of all, I want to say for those of you who have food allergies, it can be a little bit disheartening to hear a room laugh about it. So obviously, the people laughing do not mean you. So don't feel that you are not heard there. it's definitely always a little bit challenging. And I often hear that or see it on social media. So I want to make sure you know you are heard and paid attention to. For those of you who were asking about kids, and I was actually wondering if some of the presenters were asking questions because there were so many wonderful segues to their sessions. Lisa Feldman, who's the co-chair of the CIA's Healthy Kids Collaborative, and that group was here earlier in the week working through some of these questions, will be one of the presenters this afternoon at a session on Gen Z and millennials during one of the breakout sessions. And she's around. I saw her from afar, so that the group will be somewhat a resource for you. The mention of global cuisine as a template, that's obviously the driving element of this conference. So you'll hear a lot about strategies coming from global cuisines, including tomorrow we'll have a session on what is the right percentage of meat to put in a plant-forward dish. So for example, if you still want to, and you should, still serve meatloaves and things like that, how do you, there's the bland strategy, but what are some of the other things that we can do that include meat also, and at what level? And obviously, the best segue of all is to this coming session right now. Sam Oches, I introduced him yesterday, the editorial director of Food News Media, will be telling us a little bit more now about the CIA-QSR Plant-Forward Fast Casual Watch List, which goes at these businesses that are penetrating the whole country with plant-forward dishes. And there will be a session on that this afternoon. So without further ado, Sam Oches.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, I couldn't have planned really a better segue than the end of that panel talking about how do you scale this up and take it to Middle America. And real quick, I did want to relate to our Iowan in the audience. I'm Appalachian. I grew up in rural Ohio. I grew up in a small town with Taco Bell, McDonald's, Subway, McDonald's, did I say that? Yes, Wendy's, and that was it. And you know, a lot, and that's still the case, by the way. We got a Chipotle in my hometown. There was a line around the block for about 3 days. It's still crazy busy, and that's great. But there are towns across America that really lack in plant-forward foods. And you know, I find it so funny whenever there's a new brand out there. Have you ever heard that term? They call something like a new burger concept. They call it a McDonald's Slayer. You ever heard that? Or there's a new sandwich brand they call it Subway Slayer. You guys, it's not going to happen. You're not going to slay these brands. McDonald's has 14,000 locations in America. Subway has 26,000 locations in America. You are never going to slay those brands, but you can change those brands. And as I'm going to get to in my very brief presentation is we're already seeing that change start. And that change has to start at the smaller scale. It has to start at the more creative, culinary-driven, fast casual concepts. So about a year ago, Sophie Egan from CIA contacted me back in the fall, and she proposed that we do this partnership between QSR and the CIA, where we try to highlight those brands that are leading the conversation in plant-forward foods at the fast casual level. I loved this idea. I'm all about responsible, sustainable food service. So I said yes. And so what we did was we set about trying to figure out what are those brands leading this conversation. And so we went back and forth. The CIA very graciously created a methodology for us to vet those brands. I proposed several fast casual concepts that I thought were leading the plant-forward conversation. And then we put together this list. But what was so crucial about this was we didn't want to just highlight brands that are in Silver Lake in the East Village, right? What we want to do is we want to highlight brands that are really making impactful change to the way Americans eat. And so when you talk about the fast casual industry, which is still growing, in 2015 when Chipotle went through E. coli and norovirus issues, it kind of stalled the momentum of the industry to some degree. But the fast casual industry as a whole, these brands are still growing. There's still excitement there. And what we're trying to do is really how do we harness that excitement and move this industry forward so it can continue to lead that conversation in something such as plant-forward foods. So we launched the QSR CIA Plant-Forward Fast Casual Watch List, which came out in our May issue. As you can see this right here. Speaking of Chipotle, that's Brian Nichol, CEO of Chipotle. And this magazine is all around the conference here, I believe. There's a copy here for every single person. I'd really love for you to take it home and pick through the issue, but especially to take a look at this list. So really quick, I just wanted to run through why we're doing what we're doing. Why fast casual? So as I kind of alluded to earlier, the fast casual industry is taking culinary creativity and responsibility to the masses. That's not surprising probably to any of you in this room. We've seen it happen for about 25 years now. Panera and Chipotle really created this movement and have helped to carry it on, but many, many brands, many of you who are in this room today, in fact, are helping to take it to the next level. You are taking this idea of high-quality culinary standards, responsibility, sustainability, these things, packaging it into something that is familiar to the American masses. So we wanted to target that industry. Fast casual is evolving the average American's dining preferences. As I'll talk about in a little bit and alluded to earlier, the QSR industry is taking note. It's watching what's happening at the fast casual level, and so that is further influencing what Americans are eating at the national level. It's also rethinking the food service paradigm. So it used to be that you thought, well, food has to be cheap. Food has to be convenient. It has to be at a value. Woo. All right. Fighting with the one. It can't be above $5, right? The fast food price point. But fast casual is proving that that's not the case. It's proving that you can do something higher quality, higher price, and people will buy it. So who are we targeting with the list? Wow, can you guys hear me? Okay, my ear is, whew. Who are we targeting with the fast casual list? We were targeting not just buzzworthy brands. We are talking about regional brands as much as established national chains. And like I said before, we're trying to target brands that are not just on the coasts. Again, coming from somebody who's from rural Ohio, you get a little bit sick of hearing about the brands that are, changing the world in New York, changing the world in LA. And in my hometown, they're never going to see that. It's never going to impact their life necessarily. So we wanted to target the fast casual brands that had the chance to impact the life of every American across the country. So we wanted to talk about having that access in urban, suburban, exurban, even rural locations. But especially what we wanted to do is not just highlight vegetarian and vegan concepts. Of course, what the vegetarian and vegan concepts are doing is enormously exciting, but this is plant-forward, this is not plant-based. We wanted to talk about ways that you could do more plant foods in a concept that still has the option of having a meat protein. And also, you guys might know this as well, but vegetarian and vegan concepts sometimes have a negative connotation with the average American consumer. So we want to talk about those brands that are not just saying, hey, we're vegetarian, we're vegan, which is this very niche lifestyle. We want to talk about those brands that are saying, hey, we're going to have more options for you with plants, with fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and all of those ingredients, and it's not going to be strictly vegetarian or vegan. We also wanted to highlight all manner of cuisines, especially global cuisines, Mediterranean, Indian, Latin, East Asian. We wanted to find those brands that are bringing those cultural flavors and ideas from other countries and bringing that into the American food service world. So how do we select the brands? Let's just really quick look at how we vetted this and how the team at the CIA helped us sort of put this list together. I won't go through all of that. You can quickly read that, and I can send you this list too if you want it. But this is basically how we vetted the list of who we came down to. And what I just wanted to touch on really quick, I've kind of said it already, but what can we accomplish with the list such as this and with these brands that are on this list? These brands have the chance to impact the American dining preferences. They can prove that the future is plant-forward and make healthy, sustainable foods more affordable and accessible to the average American consumer. Like I said, these are fast casual brands that are taking already the preferences that America. Oh, wow. All right, I'm going to go back to slide one. Man, my ears are ringing. That's all good. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to talk about how fast casual can impact the entire country, the entire food service industry, and how it can even influence the QSR industry as well. And we've talked about briefly, but the change is already happening. Who here thought that White Castle would ever add a plant-based slider to their menu? Oh, you really believed in them. Good job. Who here really thought Burger King would add the Impossible Whopper at a national level? Okay, you guys are optimistic people. this has shocked me. It has truly shocked me how fast this has moved. That we are now at a level where Burger King has an Impossible Whopper on their national menu. They tested it in St. Louis for like 3 days, and they were like, let's go national. That's seismic change. This is not a trend or a fad. This is seismic, long-lasting future change. It reminds me a bit of the cage-free debate from about 10 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember that, where everybody's like, we're going cage-free too. Oh, well, no, I'm going to go cage-free. You know, that's what they're doing. They're competing with each other, and so as they watch their competitors get into the plant-forward business, they want to do that as well. This is a quick list of some of the brands that have jumped into the plant-forward or plant-based ingredients movement lately. And I'm sure many of you have seen several of these examples out there at the national level. This is the change that is starting, and this is the change that is going to continue at the national level. So, all right, real quick, who's on the list? You guys have been hearing about this QSR CIA Plant-Forward Fast Casual watch list for 2 days now. Who is on the list? All right. I would not be a good journalist. I'm going to make you go pick up that magazine, because I would be the worst journalist in the world if I didn't just tease you with that. So go to qsrmagazine.com/plants or pick up your copy of the issue. If you can't find it out there, just let me know. I have a few in my bag. Please take a look. Let me know what you think. We'd love to make this something long-lasting that we can continue to drive the conversation of fast casual plant-forward brands in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. And there will be a session this afternoon during one of the breakout periods. If you haven't yet signed up for breakouts, which are this afternoon and tomorrow, please do so at the break. You can do that at the hospitality desk, or you can do it through the app also, I believe. There is also still some room in some of the kitchen innovation challenges where you will be ideating and then developing products or developing dishes with your fellow attendees under the guidance of our presenters. For those of you who are seated on the edge or who are seated on the side, you can fill in the middle seats because there's a lot of seats there and it just makes it easier for people to navigate. So either move kindly now or don't hesitate to wave people in if you see people hovering who want to be coming in. We are now going to one of our culinary sessions and thinking about Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle Eastern kitchens as a cradle of plant-forward innovation. The places in the world where plant-forward has been a lifestyle, has been the only way for centuries, if not more than that in some cases. And a part of the world that has also really driven a lot of this trend, and in terms of consumer demand, also in terms of the cookbooks that have become very wide-selling. So to take us through this session, I'm very happy to have Joe Yonan join us. He's the food and dining editor at the Washington Post. He's also the editor of America, the Great Cookbook, and has written 2 cookbooks for 10-Speed Press, Eat Your Vegetables and Serve Yourself. So obviously vegetable is an important topic for him. Joe writes the Post weeknight vegetarian column and also for 5 years wrote the Cooking for One column, both of which have won honors from the Association of Food Journalists. He's also written about his efforts to grow food on his former 150 square foot urban front yard. I'm sure some of you can identify with that. Among Joe's honors are awards from the James Beard Foundation for Best Newspaper Food Coverage in 2009 and 2010, and Publication of the Year in 2017 from the International Association of Culinary Professionals. Please join me in welcoming Joe Yonan.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Anne, for that introduction and for asking me to participate. I am incredibly happy to help promote plant-based cooking and particularly to talk about Middle Eastern cuisine as a source for plant-based inspiration because I'm both a vegetarian and I'm the son of a second-generation Assyrian immigrant. That's Assyrian with an A. My grandparents came from the intersection of Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. And I'm going to show you some slides. Oh, there we go. So this is not my grandmother or my aunt or my sister, although she looks a lot like all of them. This is Najmi Batmangli, who wrote such influential books on Middle Eastern cooking as The Food of Life, and most recently, Cooking in Iran. She and writers like Claudia Roden and others made much more of an influence on me than members of my own family did. That's because my parents divorced when I was really young. I'm sure a lot of you can identify with this. And I had a pretty strained relationship with my own father, and he had a pretty strained relationship with his siblings. So I didn't really learn about Assyrian or Middle Eastern cooking from my aunts and uncles and cousins the way I would have liked. But I had writers like Naj. Her saffron rice with cumin and potatoes here reminds me of one of the few dishes I can remember from my own grandmother's table. Now, another influence on me and a lot of other cooks was Anna Sortun, still is, the Massachusetts chef of Oleana and other beautiful Middle Eastern and Middle Eastern inspired restaurants, who showed me when I lived in Boston just how produce-driven Middle Eastern cooking can be. She wrote a book in 2005 called Spice that featured all of the ingredients that are now super trendy: tahini, sumac, za'atar, preserved lemon, and the like. Here you can see Anna's take on fata. It's a traditional dish that includes a base of toasted flatbread. Here she layers it with asparagus, fava beans, yogurt, pine nuts, and radishes. When I first saw this, I thought, is this the precursor to toast? Maybe it can't be toast because there's no avocado? So you probably recognize the gentleman on the left, at least. That's Yotam Ottolenghi with his business partner, Sami Tamimi. Yotam is Israeli-born. Sami is Palestinian. They're both in London. And they founded the cafe markets called Ottolenghi in the mid-2000s. And these were very, if you haven't been there, these are very casual, very flavor-forward cafes. And most of the food is presented in these gorgeous display cases. And it's just incredibly accessible, and you feel like you could throw a dinner party just with the food that you pick up from them. It was a huge success in London, and it's not vegetarian. It's pretty plant-forward, as you can see from this gorgeous fennel and tomato gratin with a crumb topping that they made for us at the Post. So the cafes were a big hit, but Ottolenghi had his big break when he was asked to write a column in The Guardian. The slot that they had for him just happened to be the slot that they had reserved for vegetarian recipes. He's not vegetarian, and he almost turned it down. He said he didn't want to be faced with what he called the shackles of having to come up with vegetarian recipes. Thank goodness he changed his mind, because as we all know, necessity is the mother of invention, and those shackles led him to create food that was so appealing. The column was an absolute sensation, and it made him a star. So this is a recipe from his book Plenty, which was a massive success in the U.S., very influential. And this is sweet and sour leeks. Now, what's interesting to me about this dish is that you could call it leek agrodolce, and it would be Italian. But for a couple of things, the feta and the currants. Now, when Plenty came out, I was making my own transition from omnivore to vegetarian, and that book, for me and a lot of people, was just a godsend. I think it showed a lot of people who weren't sure or who were curious that plant-based cooking could be deeply satisfying and creative. Now that you may know this chef too, this is Michael Solomonov, the Philly-based chef owner of Zahav and other really great restaurants. And he's become a real food world darling because of his restaurant's wonderful modern Israeli food, but also because of his own powerful story. I think Israeli food is worth spending a little more time talking about here quickly. According to a story we have coming up in the Post, fully 5% of Israel's population follows a vegan diet. And that's almost double the number who say the same in the U.S. Tel Aviv has more than 400 vegan or vegan-friendly restaurants. We're going to meet a Tel Aviv chef later today. And even the Israeli Defense Forces will supply a vegan meal to any soldier who asks for it, along with non-leather boots and wool-free berets. Now, Michael Solomonov is not vegan, but on his menu are many vegan dishes. Now, these are not dishes that have been re-engineered to be vegan. These are ones that are just naturally free of meat and dairy because they use, say, tahini for creaminess or beans for protein. So here are the salatim, the fresh and pickled vegetables that come with every meal. He also serves incredible versions of what might just be the Middle East's greatest contribution to plant-based eating. Can you guess what it is? Drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. Come on. So, how many hummus options are there in your local supermarket now? There are plenty that make purists like Michael Solomonov upset. Don't get me started on chocolate hummus. But Michael makes an incredibly gorgeous, perfect version. The other dish, the other Israeli, and I don't want to get into a debate about where these dishes actually come from, but another one from that part of the world that's a big influence, of course, is falafel. This is New York chef Einat Admony. She came to the Post to show us her best techniques for making falafel. And one of the things that I find interesting about falafel is that I think it was really the OG veggie burger, right? Like, why do we even need to invent a new veggie burger when we have falafel? You could just make it into a bigger patty. It's kind of the same thing. So she and Michael are playing with Middle Eastern influences in their food, too. They make traditional food, but they also have a lot of playful touches. So this is her, for instance, her halva creme brulee. Another playful force who has gotten a lot of much-deserved attention recently for the promotion of Middle Eastern food is Yasmin Khan. Her latest book, Zaytun, celebrates Palestinian cooking, and she's very flexible about her definition of Palestinian cooking. In her book, she said that if she ate a dish in a Palestinian restaurant or was taught it by a Palestinian cook, even if it's not traditional, it was fair game. Hence, pickled avocado, which is a brilliant way to speed up the ripening of an underripe fruit. And now I find myself wanting pickled avocado toast. So this is another hummus from Lebanese cook and author Maureen Aboud. It's so light and so fluffy, I have to ask if you would peel your chickpeas for this. Would you peel your chickpeas if you had a staff to do it for you? This is what you get. Now, one of my favorite plant-based restaurants in the country is Veg in Philly, which has also been inspired and motivated by Zahav. At Fancy Radish, their pretty new place in D.C., we have things like this dessert from Kate Jacoby. This is a rhubarb gazpacho with sumac jelly donuts, sour cherry jellies, and halva ice cream. So you can see the Middle Eastern influences spreading to non-Middle Eastern chefs. Michael Solomonov has gotten into the playfulness too at Federal Donuts. These are his salted tahini donuts with sesame seeds. So I'm really glad that we talked a little bit about fast casual and that that's coming up more in the conference, because I think that those restaurants are hugely influential and represent the opportunity to introduce plant-based cooking to a new generation of diners. And one of the ones that I wanted to point up to you today is a very small restaurant in DC that has 2 locations, but they're planning to grow, and I would put my money on them. And it's called Little Sesame. This is Nick Weissman and Ronan Tene. They were inspired by the hummus areas in Israel and by Michael Solomonov's own hummus area, Dizengoff. So it's a fast casual concept, and you all know what that means. And here's one of their hummus bowls. It's topped with cauliflower tahini, scallions, and everything spice, which I think is a really fun nod, of course, to the bagel. And they also make a soft serve. This is a swirl of vanilla tahini and chocolate Turkish coffee, non-dairy. So I'm going to leave you with some stats. 2 to 3% of U.S. consumers say they're strictly vegan, and 4 to 6% call themselves vegetarian. That number's been fairly static, although it's growing a lot among younger people. But the deal is, the number of consumers who say they want to eat more plant-based foods is increasing all the time, and it's now more than 40%, according to Nielsen. We talked a little bit earlier, the panel before this, about some of the terminology. I think that the term plant-based itself has helped drive a lot of this growth. Vegan sounds limiting, and vegan is about your identity, and vegetarian is about your identity, and people don't want to be labeled. I mean, I think plant-based is sort of the equivalent of fluid, right, or non-binary, plant-forward. Plant-forward or plant-based is about a way of eating, or it's even about a particular dish or a single meal. And I think that the people who are driving the growth are millennials and Gen Zs. So a company like Little Sesame, with its Instagram-friendly millennial pink decor, is aiming squarely at that audience. So that's all that I had for you, but I want to I'm going to stay with you while our chef does his demo. I want to introduce you to Musa Dağdeviren. I apologize to all the Turkish speakers in the house. You may have seen him on season 5 of Netflix's Chef's Table. He has several acclaimed restaurants in Istanbul. He started a publishing company that has published a quarterly magazine and several books, and he has his own first English language book out recently from Phaidon, the Turkish Cookbook. Chef, welcome.
Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you.
Siz de hoş geldiniz.
What do you have for us?
Neler yapacaksınız bizim için bugün?
Şimdi bugün bir kapama aşı yapacağız.
We're going to prepare a dish called kapama aşı.
Kapama aşı özellikle bu mevsimde
This dish is usually prepared in this season.
kadınlar sepetleriyle birlikte
Ladies in the villages go with their baskets.
tarla ve bahçelere giderler
They go up into the hills or into their gardens.
ve bütün yeşillikleri toplarlar.
And they collect different types of greens.
Ve bu yeşillikler asma yaprağının ilk süngüleri.
These are, gösterin istersen. So, grape leaves, the tips of the grape leaves,
Bunlar
just sprouting,
ve asma yaprağı,
and the grape leaves themselves,
kuzu kulağı otunun
sorrel,
ekşi ve bunun yabanisini
and
toplarlar.
the wild version of this also is what they collect.
Hindiba,
Chicory,
eve gömeci,
and this is the mallow.
evet. Bunlar hatta toplayabildikleri çok daha yeşil olursa
And besides these,
pilav çok daha güzel olur.
they collect different ones besides these. Anything that they can, that's in season in the spring.
Bunda teknik olarak zeytinyağlı,
We use olive oil in this dish,
baharatları var.
and we have a few spices we're going to
Asla
add.
su kullanmıyor.
And this dish is cooked without adding any liquid, any
Yanında
water.
ayran ve kuru soğanla birlikte tüketiliyor. İmece usulü birlikte yeniliyor.
And they usually eat it with a drink called ayran, which is a yogurt drink, a sour yogurt drink, and a onion.
Evet.
Is the way they eat it. So he's going to demonstrate how to put it together now.
Diğeri
Okay.
muhalle.
So would you like him to do that one first or talk about the second one?
Sure, you could do that one first.
Okay. Onu yapalım istersen önce, ondan sonra bunun hakkında konuşuruz.
So the onion that they eat with the dish how is the onion prepared?
So he's going to show. He's going to show that.
Okay.
Soğan nasıl yiyorlar yanında diye ben göstereceğini söyledim.
Şimdi evet. Finalde göstereceğiz.
He's going to finish the dish with that onion.
Yağın önce yarısını koyuyoruz.
So we put half the oil in first. Add our onions.
Soğan, sarımsak,
Garlic.
biraz tuz,
Salt.
pul biber,
Pepper flakes. Turkish pepper flakes. These are Maraş pepper.
Maraş. Mm-hmm.
kuru nane,
Dry mint.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Dry mint.
Oh, dry mint. Yep.
And tomato paste. And
Bu
then,
sırada bu yeşillikleri buraya
and then
bırakıyoruz.
the greens that we showed you earlier, these are all chopped up finely, and he's going to mix these together now.
Bu böyle çok görüldüğüne bakmayın.
It looks like a lot, but when it cooks down, it reduces quite a bit.
Bulgur sadece şöyle 2 avuç.
He puts a couple of handfuls of bulgur into there.
Bulgur.
And that's like a number 3-course bulgur.
Yine bir parça tuz attım.
You add a little more salt to it. Başka bunun hakkında?
Yine pul biber.
So he's just adding the same spices, the dry mint and the pepper flakes into that mixture too. Added some more black pepper.
Bizim biber salçamız olacak.
Chef, is this something that you ate when you were growing up?
Bu sizin büyürken yediğiniz şeylerden bir tanesi mi?
Evet, evet.
Yes, it was.
Mutlak bu mevsimde hatta başka bir şey yenmez. Yani sadece bu yemek yenilir. Yanında et ya da ona benzer şeyler olmaz. Daha çok yoksul insanların yediği yemek.
So less fortunate people usually eat this that don't have meat available readily. And he did grow up eating this, yes, when he was growing up in the southeast. So he gives it a nice mix like this, as you can see.
Bunu elle soldurma derler. Bu işleme soldurma işlemi.
So he prefers mixing it with his hands like this and kind of incorporating everything to it, so that it's combined evenly.
Does it remind anybody of a massage kale salad yet?
Bu bulgur buradaki bitkinin suyuyla bütünleşecek.
So the bulgur is going to absorb all the moisture from the greens. Wow. That's how it's going to be cooking. And then tops it off with the olive oil.
Love it.
Sağlıklı.
And it keeps your skin nice and soft.
Ellerini yumuşatıyor.
Evet. Şimdi zeytinyağı bizde çok sevilir zeytinyağı.
We use a lot of olive oil in Turkey. Yeah.
Ve bu şu andaki zeytinyağı çok az. Hani
Actually, this is less than what you usually use as far as olive oil.
It's toning it down for the CIA.
evet. Zaten burada şey yaparken özellikle sunum yaparken sizin fabrikanız mı var hani böyle bu kadar diye 18 litrelik günde 5 tane şey kullanıyoruz.
In his restaurants, they use about 100 liters a day. They use 5 18-liter tubs, so that's approximately, I don't know, 20 gallons? 25 gallons?
Wow. Bu kısık ateşte
on a very low heat,
20 dakika
about 20 minutes.
Okay.
With a lid on, it cooks and it absorbs as again.
Bu pilavımız pişmiş durumda.
Wow.
It absorbs everything without any water added to it.
Wow, that is so beautiful.
Evet.
Now, is this eaten as a main course?
Ana yemek olarak mı?
Burada lafınızı ettim. Mutlak dibi tutması gerekiyor bu pilavın.
So the bottom, you know it's done when the bottom's slightly scorched.
Evet. Yani
like
hafif
tadik
bir bakarsanız burada görürsünüz.
Yeah, as you can see, it's a little darker.
Does it get crispy? It doesn't get crispy on the bottom, though.
Alt taraf kıtır oluyor mu diye soruyor.
Çok hafif o böyle yanık kıtırlığı hissediyorsunuz.
A little bit, you taste a little scorched crunchiness in there.
Great.
Bu soğanı da bıçakla değil, elle.
And he does
Böyle
this with his hand.
parmağımızı böyle koyuyoruz.
You put your
Oh man! Wow.
Evet.
Karate.
Böyle bir şey. Bu kapama işi.
so
Yani-
the kapama is served this way traditionally.
Evet.
So is that traditionally a main course?
Ana yemek olarak mı normalde bunu?
Evet.
Yeah.
Evet.
Yes.
Yes.
As a main course.
And when you eat the shallot, do you just pick it up and like take a little bite of
Yes.
the shallot?
Soğanı yanında.
Evet, soğan, ayran, mutlaka.
And the ayran drink, the yogurt drink that I was.
Hatta bu,
Oh yes.
And then,
Okay.
yeah, a yogurt drink.
bu pilavın özelliği sıcaktan çok soğuk bir gün kaldığı zaman çok daha güzel olur.
So you can also eat it the following day as a cold dish,
Okay.
and it's the flavors are even more intense.
Great. Thank you.
Evet. Şimdi
Any other questions?
Any questions about that dish?
var mı sorusu?
I'm sorry.
I don't know if you're using Slido, but you can also, I don't mean to be too much of a rebel, but you can shout out something. You have a question?
Ayrıca bu tarif kitapta da var. Yeni çıkardığımız kitapta da
This
tarif var.
this recipe is also in the book that he just
Oh,
published.
great.
Çocuklar için.
Great.
Evet. Şimdi bu yemeğimiz de şimdi bu Güneydoğu bölgesinde.
This is from the southeast,
Bu da Doğu Akdeniz bölgesinde.
and this is
yapılan
from the
yemek.
Black Sea on the eastern Black Sea coast.
Antakya. Yemeğin adı Muhalle bir kadın ismi.
Pardon, bunu Karadeniz dedin sen bunu.
Antakya, Akdeniz.
Akdeniz. I'm sorry, I misunderstood him. It's from the eastern Mediterranean near the Syrian border, near Antioch.
Okay.
Burada da yine bir yoğurma işlemi var.
He's going to be kneading the vegetables together again, similar to the way he did it in the previous dish.
Burada ana malzemeleri domates. Özellikle Ağustos aylarında çok olur. Yani serada yetişmemiş patlıcan, serada yetişmemiş biberle.
This dish is popular in the month of August when all the vegetables are ripe and they're not out of a hothouse.
Evet. Domates,
Yes,
biber,
the-
soğan,
Tomatoes, green lentils,
mercimek, evet,
onions,
sarımsak,
garlic,
biber.
green peppers, bell peppers.
Burada acı isteğe göre hani.
If you want it a little spicy, it's up to you. He's adding some dry mint again.
Nane.
Are the lentils cooked?
They are cooked slightly. They're cooked for like 15 minutes.
Okay.
Mercimeğin daha önce pişmiş mi diye soruyor. Onu 15 dakika pişirdi.
Evet, yarım pişmiş.
It's half cooked.
Okay.
Half cooked. So he cooks them about 15 minutes or so. And that's a pepper paste, Turkish pepper paste that he added.
Acı.
And that's a tomato paste. And
Nar
we're topping
ekşisi.
out with pomegranate molasses.
Oh yeah.
Evet. Bunun ismi hani Muhalle dedim bir kadın ismi.
Mualle is the name of a woman.
Evet. Ve bölgede bu yemek aslında hem bir hani patlıcanı bir et niyetiyle bakarlar.
So in the region that it's cooked, they consider the eggplant as the meat of this dish.
Evet. Ve ayrıca bir ülkemizde özellikle zeytinyağlı yemekleri Hristiyan kökenler periz döneminde yapıp yerler.
So in the geography of Turkey, the people, the Christians, usually prepare this dish during time of Lent.
Okay.
Musa, I have a question. The dried mint, is it just regular dried mint? Is there anything special to it? And do you also use fresh, or what? I'm just very intrigued by that use.
Kuru nanenin bir özelliği var mı? Onun kullanmanın taze nane yerine.
Aroma olarak taze nane renk değiştiriyor. Hem siyahlaşıyor hem de bunun kadar karakterli bir tat vermiyor.
So the fresh mint, as all you know, gets bruised or starts turning very quickly. But the dry one has a more intense flavor because the way it's dried and all the flavors are kind of...
Bir de kuru nane mutlak ve mutlak böyle direkt güneş içerisinde değil, gölgede kurutulmalı.
Yeah. And the way you dry the mint is also important, so you don't dry it under direct sun, but in a shaded area. So it's warm enough in a dry climate, but not under direct sunlight.
I also think that it's probably likely that you get much better dried mint than we do. Is that part of what people might be thinking?
Bize burada getirilen kuru naneden daha iyi nane.
Gördüm. Yani böyle daha siyah.
The dry mint here, as you know, is much darker than the mint that he brought himself from Turkey, which has this vibrant green color. And this is the one that was provided to us from the U.S.
Can we show those? Oh man, yeah, okay.
Ama bu Türkiye'de de var yani.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Turkey, he has the same
buradaki
issue. He has to search for it.
Tüketici olsun, şefler olsun, lokanta çalıştıranlar olsun, mutlak ve mutlak hani birinin söylediğiyle değil, bilinçli tüketici olmak zorunda. Neyin ne olduğunu ayırt etmesini bilmiyorsa güzel yemek çıkartma şansı yok.
Yeah. So as a chef, as a consumer, we have to know what our ingredients should be like and be educated on the ingredients that we're going to be using so we can tell the difference between a good product and a bad product.
Şimdi patlıcanları şöyle
So
kestim.
after they cut the eggplant into these shapes, they made a little indentation in the middle part of it.
Biraz tuzlu suda beklettik.
And put in some
Sonra
salty water for like
sıktık
10
onun
minutes.
suyunu,
And then
acısını çıkartmak için.
squeeze the excess liquid out of it.
Evet. Şimdi bunu böyle daire şeklinde devam ediyoruz.
And then, as you can see, he put a little bit of the mixture on the bottom and is putting layers of this eggplant on top.
Burada hani önce mercimeği de koydum. Ama önce mercimek sonra salatasını koymak da mümkün.
You can also do it in a different way as far as mixing all the vegetables and make a layer of that and then making a layer of lentils on top of it. He mixed everything together, but you can have layers of it also, separate layers, with the vegetables and the lentils separate.
Chef, can I ask about your use of your hands in squeezing and mixing the dish? What do you think that brings to your cooking? It's a little bit unusual for us to see here. I think a lot of us would just be, using a spoon, right?
Ellerini kullanmanın bir şey var mı, anlamı var mı? Biz çoğumuz burada kaşık veya başka bir şeyle karıştırırız diyor.
Ya mesela bir salata yapın, kaşıkla karıştırın ama yaptığınız şeye buradaki suyunu sıkıyorsunuz böyle. Ezip şu işlemi yapıyorsunuz. Bunu şeyde yapamazsınız, kaşıkla yapamazsınız.
So to be able to squeeze it a little bit and get the juices to for the juices to be, come out of it, you have to squeeze it like that. You can't do that with a spoon.
Yeah.
Ya da mesela eldiven takıp da yaptığınız zaman tam tersi eldivenin teri yemeğe geçer. Yani hani hijyeni de doğru sorgulamak gerektiğini düşünüyorum.
And if you use gloves, he believes that, it takes away from the flavor.
Hani
Especially when you've got those olive oil softened hands.
Özellikle zeytinyağı yumuşatılmış ellerin olduğu zaman diyor.
evet.
And this is some
Üstüne
opal
en
basil.
son finalde reyhan koyuyoruz.
I'm sorry, what is
Opal basil?
Oh, basil, yes. Uh-huh.
Evet. Bu böyle. Yine yapayım mı elimi?
Would you like to see him? With his hand.
Oh. Wow. I love it.
Evet. Bu da şöyle bakalım.
I also bet that's better olive oil than most of us get here. Chef, who taught you to cook?
Kim size yemek yapmayı öğretti?
Baş ustam annem.
His first teacher was his mom.
Yeah.
Hani şeyde de annemin babası da usta ama esas bizde evler çok yani kadınlar yemeğin hafıza benliğini oluşturur.
So his grandfather was also a cook, but in the homes, the mothers are the ones who have all the recipes or remember all the recipes correctly.
Evet. Zaten ismi de mesela Muhalle, benim eşim Zeynep.
His wife, Zeynep.
Yani sadece bu yemek olsun, başka hiçbir şey istemez.
His wife, Zeynep, if this food's available, she won't eat anything else.
Yani illa da annesinin muhallesini, tabii ki ben onun gibi yapamam. Anneler çok daha güzel yapar.
She prefers her mom's muhalle to his muhalle.
Don't we all?
Burada da yemeğimiz hazır durumda.
Again, this is the finished version of the muhalle.
Wow.
Tek son defa karıştırılıyor ve
And
böyle
then
servis yapılıyor.
you mix it one last time, and then it's ready to be served.
I love that with both dishes, the fact that you're not adding any water, that all of the liquid is coming from the vegetables. Even you've taken some liquid out of the vegetables before you put them in. I'm assuming that that gives you a really concentrated flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, the flavors are definitely more concentrated. Yeah.
And again, is this something that would be, is this a main dish? This is a main course?
Yes. Bu ana yemek değil mi diyor soruyor.
Evet.
Yes, it is.
Normalde bizde şöyle bir şey var. Hani bu klasik Batı tarzı beslenme alışkanlığı, hani önce çorbanın ardından işte ara sıcak.
So, in the Western culture, there's usually courses. So you have a soup first, and then you have a main course. Good.
Bu aslında bizde öz kültürümüzde yok. Sonradan oluşan bir şey.
And traditionally, we didn't have that type of approach to eating. It's something that happened afterwards.
Şimdi bu yemeği aynı bu şekilde yaptığımız gibi bir de böyle karnıyarık gibi de yapabilirler.
So he's going to show a different version that this can be prepared like a stuffed eggplant.
Oh, great.
Evet.
The karnıyarık.
Yani karnıyarıkta şunu yaparız. Bu şekilde bu harç konulup içerisinde ona da muhalle değil şıh muhalle derler.
So the name, if you do a stuffed eggplant like this and stuff it with the same type of mixture and cook it in a pot like this, şık muhalle.
Bu da
şık muhalle mı?
Şıh yani. Şıh hani.
So it's like a grand muhalle.
Evet. Bir de bunu yaparlar yine.
So you're leaving the stem ends intact.
Bu da bu şekilde. Önce zeytinyağında kızartılır.
They fry it in olive oil.
Sonra aralarına bu harç konulur. Yine çok kısık ateşte yavaş yavaş pişir.
And then put this in layers, and then again the same vegetable mixture can be added on top and cooked the same way in a pot.
Wow. Wow, that's great.
Şimdi ezogelin çorbası yapacağız.
We're going to prepare the ezogelin soup now.
Evet. Şimdi ezogelin çorbası yine bir kadın ismi.
Ezogelin is a lady's name again.
Bu kadın Birinci Dünya Savaşı döneminde doğuyor.
She was born during around the First World War.
Ve işte yaklaşık İkinci Dünya Savaşı'dan 10 yıl öncesinde çok böyle bölgenin çok güzel kadını olarak tanımlanıyor.
She was known to be a very beautiful lady around the Second World War.
Ve çok gözde bir kadın.
As I said, she was very beautiful and.
Ve bir gün ciddi o dönemin hastası vebası verem hastalığına tutuluyor.
She was sick. She got tuberculosis apparently.
Evet.
During that time.
Pardon. Şimdi bu verem hastalığında Aynı zamanda hastane yemeklerini mutlak duymuşsunuzdur. Yani hep
So,
hastane
because she
yemeklerine
was sick,
herkes
she had to
nefret ediyor.
go to the hospital. And as most of you know, hospital food is not the most appetizing.
Ve Ezogel'in hastalanıp Halep'te bir hastanede yatıyor.
So she was in Gaziantep, but she went to a hospital in Aleppo, which is in current Syria. So she was in the hospital being cured for the tuberculosis.
Ve hastane yemeklerinden nefret ediyor.
And she really didn't like the food that they were serving there.
Ve oranın mutfağına gitmeye karar veriyor.
And she decides to see what they're doing in the kitchen.
Ve mutfakta bu çorbayı yapıyor.
And she prepares this soup in the kitchen.
Evet.
She herself?
She herself.
Evet. Peki Ezogel'in ne diyorlar ki bu hani bu çorbanın ismi ne diyorlar? Mercimek çorbası diyor.
So they ask her what's the name of the soup? It's a lentil soup, she says.
Hayır diyorlar. Bu işte doktorlar, hemşireler bunun adı şey olsun. Ezogelin çorbası.
So the doctors and the nurse in the hospital like it so much they say it should be ezogelin.
Evet. Ve hastanede yattığı gün boyunca hep bu çorbayı yapıyor.
So as long as she was staying at the hospital taking the treatment, she prepares the soup pretty much every day.
Tabii bu bir uydurma.
So he's saying this is a story.
Evet. Esas işin başka bir boyutu ama tabii somut olmayan bir uydurma ama artık efsaneleşmiş.
Yeah. So this is the story that many people are like a folk tale are saying, but there's another version that Musa knows.
Bir Ezogel'in 1956'da öldükten sonra
After she passed away in 1956,
ve adına ağıtlar ve türküler yapılıyor.
they make some traditional songs in her memory.
Ve sonra sineması uyarlanıyor 1968 yılında.
And they even make a movie of her in the late 60s.
Sinemada çok hem türküsü hem onun yaşam öyküsü çok etki yaratıyor.
The movie is liked a lot. So the movie and the story are enjoyed or liked a
Ve
lot.
o dönemin özellikle 60 ve 70'li yıllardaki bu bulyon tarzı hazır bulyoncular Ezogelin çorbası diye bir marka
So
üretiyorlar.
in the 60s and 70s, right around when this movie was so popular, the companies who were making bouillons, concentrated bouillons, make a soup called ezogelin.
Ve böylelikle o gerçekte bu anlattıklarım hani temel doğru şeyler. Hani o ve bir efsane oluyor ve geleneksel bir çorba haline geliyor. Bugün Türkiye'nin her tarafında Ezogelin çorbası diye çorbamız var.
So so combined with the story that he first talked about Ezo going to the hospital, with the combination of the bouillon, that it becomes a very well-known and very traditional dish in Turkey that everybody likes. You can pretty much see it on all Turkish restaurants' menus.
Hatta yani böyle gelenekselin dışında aynı zamanda yerel bir çorba da oluyor. Hem yerel hem geleneksel oluyor.
It's both traditional and local type of soups in lots of regions.
Great. So what did he whisk in there?
So we had the cooked lentils in there. We cooked these earlier, and we added, because after it cooled down, it kind of came together, and so we added a little water so it will loosen it up a little bit.
Oh, that was pureed cooked lentils.
That was pureed cooked lentils,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Şimdi bunu suda haşladık.
So we boiled the lentils in water with a little salt.
Haşlanırken üstünde oluşan beyaz köpükleri yani kefini alıyoruz.
And then while it's boiling, we
Know what that is?
Bak elim vurmuyor.
He's not using his hands. So when the soup's boiling, we kind of clear the froth that comes to the top.
And we'll finish quickly now. Yeah. I'm told.
Bitmek üzere. Hemen, tamam.
Yes.
And this soup will be served in the breakout session, I believe.
Oh, great.
Soğan ve sarımsak.
So he added the onions and garlic, adding the maraş pepper again,
Yep.
Ve nane.
dried mint.
Dried mint.
Evet.
Yep.
Domates salçası.
Tomato paste.
Ve mercimek.
And that's the way he finishes the soup.
Wow. Beautiful.
Bir de sarımsağı alırsam şey yapacağım.
So adding the lemon gives that nice
Evet.
acidity.
Bu limon isteğe göre.
Yeah, it's up to your preference.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, Musa. Thank you, Burak Epir, translator extraordinaire. And now go and taste this soup at the break in the atrium, and we see you back here at 11. Thank you. And Joe and Musa will be signing their books at lunch in case you want maybe a few more of those recipes that look so good.